Hi there, welcome back to my kitchen. Alright, so what I'm going to make today is a brisket. I've got a good 10-pound brisket here that I've already trimmed. I trimmed it about 1/4 of an inch of that fat cap so that I have a little bit of fat left on the top. That will protect the meat, keep it nice and juicy. But I did take a lot of that off. And also, I've got both parts. I've got the flat, which is here, and then underneath here is the point. And so in between the two, there's another good chunk of fat that divides the two. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a low and slow cook on this. I'm going to throw it on my Traeger grill at 225, and I'm going to let it just go. So I'm going to throw it on tonight at about 11 p.m. Because it's going to be an overnight cook. I want it for dinner tomorrow night. So if it's done earlier than dinner, that's fine, because what I'll do is I'll wrap it up in either butcher paper or tinfoil. In my case, it's going to be tinfoil because I don't have any butcher paper at the moment. And I'm going to throw it in a cooler and wrap it with a whole bunch of towels, and it will hold for up to 6 hours. So I'm not worried if it's done earlier. It's better that you give yourself lots of time, because I've done it so many times before where I didn't give myself enough time, and then coming down to crunch time, you're in a bit of a panic. You're upping the temp trying to get it done. So you don't want that to happen. So give yourself lots of time. Put it on the night before and it'll be ready and everything will be fine. So now that I've trimmed it all already, all I'm going to do is season it. What I'm seasoning it with is the Traeger beef rub, salt, pepper, and a little bit of roasted garlic. I've already got that all mixed up in here. You want to coat it generously with the seasoning. It's going to create this awesome bark on it that is actually my favorite part of the whole brisket, is that crust on the outside. The fatty bits covered in that crust, it's so good. So all I'm going to do is add a little bit of olive oil on it, just so that it kind of acts like a binder for the seasoning. So I'm going to go ahead and just season this top bit here. I've got the olive oil going, and I'm just going to, I use one hand for my seasoning and one clean hand. So I'm going to go ahead, rub the olive oil in with my the hand that I'm using as my dirty hand. And I do have saran wrap underneath, in case you're wondering, because then I can wrap it up and keep it in the fridge until I'm ready to throw it on. So I'm going to go ahead and just sprinkle some of the seasoning on the top. All right, now that I've done the top part, I'm going to just flip it over and I'm going to do the underside. So the brisket's all seasoned, both sides, everywhere, really generously. I'm going to let this sit out now for a couple hours, just so that it comes down to a bit of the room temperature, so that when I throw it on, it's not so much of a shock and it will cook nice and evenly. I'm going to throw it on at 225, let it go throughout the night. A nice little gadget that I have is the ThermoPro 20. It's got 2 probes. You can either throw them both in meat, or you can throw one in meat and one on the grill. And I've got a wireless little remote that I have for it that will tell me both temperatures of both probes. So for a night cook like this thing is fantastic. I've done a lot of overnight cooks, and usually what I wind up doing is having to sleep on the couch and waking up every couple hours, going out just to make sure that, you know, the grill isn't doing anything weird, or the temperatures are normal and all that, and there's enough pellets and water in the pan inside. But with this thing, it's awesome because I'm going to throw one in my meat and one on the grill, and I'll bring this to bed with me. And then if I wake up every couple hours, I can kind of look at the temperature of my meat, the internal temp, and I can also look at the temperature of my grill, so that I know that my grill is working and it's holding the proper temperature that I want it to. This thing is pretty fantastic. I've really liked having it so far. It's gotten me a lot more sleep when I do the overnight cooks. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to let this rest now for a couple hours, and I'm going to throw it on, let it go throughout the night, and then tomorrow morning, I figure probably when I wake up is when the stall is going to happen. So around when the internal temp of the meat reaches around 160, you reach this stall, and that's basically where all that fat needs to break down, like the stuff in between the point and the flat, and all the fat on the inside of the meat needs to start breaking down, and it causes this stall where the internal temperature of the meat won't change for a while. So it can take anywhere from like an hour to like 5 hours. So some people start to panic during that time because that internal temp isn't changing, but don't panic, it's normal. It totally will eventually start to go. Once you break that stall, your meat temperature will start to, internal temperature will start to rise again. So, but what you can do during that stall is you can wrap it up. You can either wrap it in tinfoil or butcher paper. Ideally, if you have butcher paper, it's better because butcher paper will let it breathe a little bit more and you're not steaming the meat. It will just help with speeding up the process, the cooking process a bit. If you don't have the butcher paper, you can still use tinfoil and it works good as well. The only thing is tinfoil doesn't breathe, so you're going to wind up steaming that meat a little bit. So if you like that really crispy bark, it will take away from that bark a little bit with the tinfoil, but it's still really good. Your meat's going to be super juicy and great. So it's a choice you have to make. You can also just let it ride. You don't even need to wrap it with anything. It will just take a little bit longer. You got to add a couple more hours onto your cook. I'm going to do a wrap at around the 160 mark. I like to wait until I got that perfect bark, that bark that I'm really happy with, then I wrap it. I don't have any of the butcher paper right now, so I will be using tinfoil. So you'll be able to see at the end the final product, the bark and all, see if you like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and let this sit and I will show you tomorrow morning what it looks like. Brisket's been going for 10 hours now. I'm gonna take a peek and see what she looks like, make sure the drip tray is still got some liquid in it. Internal temp is 161 right now and it's been going for 10 hours. There's still liquid in the bottom. I'm going to close it. Alright, so my brisket's all done. She's been resting in the cooler for about 5 hours now. I put it on at 10 p.m. last night before I went to bed, and then about 5 hours after I went to bed, I came down and I just turned up the temperature to 250. Just because it's so cold outside, it was about -5, the temperature was kind of hovering around 217, 220. And so I put it up to 250 and then it hovered around 240, which was perfect. I was happy with that. So when I put it on last night, I used one of these tin pans to put it on. So what I did is I filled it up a quarter of the weight with beef broth, water, and a little bit of apple cider vinegar. And that way, while it steams, it keeps a little bit of moisture inside your grill so it's not so dry. And then what I did, so that the meat wasn't sitting right in the broth, I put a rack over top and put my brisket on there. That way you get smoke and air that can circulate all the way around it and you get that nice bark all around. So that's what I did, how I put it on there. Also what happens is all the drippings from the brisket go into the broth that you put at the bottom, and a lot of it will evaporate, but you will still be left with some at the end. So when I wrapped it, after 12 hours is when I finally wrapped it. It was around internal temperature of 165 at the 12-hour mark. And what I did is I wrapped it in tinfoil because I didn't have any butcher paper. And I used all the sauce that was left in the pan and I put it in a Tupperware container. So what happens is I let it cool and I put it in the fridge, and you'll get the fat on top will solidify. So you can just scoop that fat out and you're left with this awesome like beef au jus. It's perfect. And then for leftovers, if you pour that on your beef, when you're reheating it, it will bring it back to life, put a lot of moisture back into the meat. It's great. I definitely recommend you keep the juices from the meat. And so I haven't opened it yet. I haven't seen what it looks like. I'm going to open it up now and we'll see how it turned out. So what I did is I added a bunch of towels and I also added a hot water bottle at the bottom. And it will hold, it should still be super steamy hot and perfect. Oh yeah, I can barely touch it with my hands, it's still so hot. I'm just going to put this aside for now. That aside. Okay, let's open it up and see what the brisket looks like. Oh, that smells so good and it's steaming hot still. There you have it. That's been resting for 5 hours and that's how hot it still is. And it just like, you can see how jiggly it is. Perfect consistency of what I wanted. I'm going to just put this aside. So I'm going to go ahead and slice into the brisket now and see what it looks like inside. A slice right in the middle here so we can have a really good look. Oh, it's steaming. Look at all that juice. That looks absolutely incredible. It is so juicy, and you got that beautiful smoke ring on there. Perfect. I'm so happy with the cook on this brisket. It looks absolutely perfect. I'm just gonna slice another piece here. Like, look at how beautiful that is. You've got your, it's not like it's pull apart, but it still holds together like a slice, which is exactly what you want. Pulled pork is supposed to be pull apart, fall apart right away. Brisket, you want it to be like still able to hold like a slice, but when you pull it apart, it comes apart really easily. You don't have to like, it's not a tough cut of meat at all when it's cooked low and slow like this. So I wound up separating the flat here from the point, and I chopped up the flat, but my knife wasn't doing it justice, so I pulled out my electric turkey carver. It worked great. So I'm so happy with how this brisket turned out. It is absolutely fantastic. Like you can see here, there's such a beautiful smoke ring on it, and like it is so tender. Like I can pull this part no problem, but it's not like pulled pork. It doesn't just fall apart. I'm gonna give it a little try. It's so flavorful and juicy. Oh, and that beef flavor, like that's what you want to shine in a nice brisket. I definitely recommend trying it this way. So I didn't spritz it. I just let it ride for 12 hours. Then I wrapped it just in tin foil because I didn't have butcher paper. If you have butcher paper, then I recommend doing that. I don't have quite as much of a nice bark on it than I would if I didn't wrap it at all. I've done it a couple different ways. I've done it where I didn't wrap it at all, and then you get this really nice crispy outside bark, but it's not nearly as juicy as it is like here when I wrapped it in the tin foil. So both of them have pros and cons. I like this better because I like that really juicy inside, and the bark is still really good, so the flavor is amazing. So I hope you like this. If you do, please like and subscribe to my channel. I'll show more recipes along the way.